Well, a new report is ranking hundreds of Ontario secondary schools, with 4 institutions in the GTA topping the list with a perfect score. The Fraser Institute ranked 747 public, Catholic, and independent high schools across the province based on 7 indicators derived from provincial test results. 4 schools were awarded a perfect score: Thornhills St. Robert Catholic School, Richmond Hills St. Teresa of Lisieux Catholic High School, Markham's St. Augustine Catholic High School, and Toronto's St. Michael's Choir School. So for more on the report, we're joined by Senior Fellow at the Fraser Institute, Paige MacPherson. Thanks a lot for joining us. So taking a look, we're talking about 4 schools awarded a perfect score. They're all located in the GTA. First off, what does it take to get a perfect score?
So there's a few things that go into the rankings. We look at the average achievement when it comes to secondary schools of the EQAO math test in grade 9, as well as the performance on the Ontario secondary school literacy test. So we look at the outcomes of those tests, as well as the percentage of kids who actually completed and wrote those tests. We also take into account the averages of boys and girls, and sort of track that gender difference over time. And then we put all of those different indicators, we standardize them, and then we come up with an average score, and that's how we get the ranking. So really it's one snapshot in time, but we also give a 5-year trend indicator to show how schools are improving or struggling over time. And then we also give the special characteristics of students. So schools that have whatever the percentage would be of kids with special needs, whatever the percentage would be of students that are English language learners. So there's a lot of info that goes in there. We do the sort of number crunching, and we come out with averages, and we create the ranking for parents.
And at the same time, some of the lowest ranked schools on the list are in the GTA.
Yeah, that's true. So I do want to point out one really important thing that parents should note when they're interpreting these results, which is that the ranking is, like I said, it's one piece of information. I think it's a really empowering and valuable piece of information for parents. We put out this information because it's just not easily accessible from any other source. So we make it digestible and understandable, but not only the ranking is what's important, it's also that trend indicator. So how has the school done over the past 5 years? If you're to dig into it and you see that your child's school is lower down on the rankings, look at that improvement indicator to see if they've actually been improving over time. Because some of the real standout schools have come a really long way. For example, Georges P. Vanier, a public school in Hamilton, one of the fastest improving schools in the province, which rose from a score of 2 out of 10 in 2018 to 7.1 in 2024. So really great improvement. And then another example, Central Technical School, which is a public school in Toronto, is another fast improving school. So that rose from a ranking of 0.2, or a score of 0.2 in 2018 to 4.2 in this latest ranking. So it's not just that number that matters. It's also, how is my child's school putting in the work to show that really great improvement over time? And your child's school might fit into that category. How would you suggest parents use this information? That's a great question. So I think this is really one tool in parents' toolboxes. When you're considering a school for your child, you should do a lot of things. Talk to the teachers at the school, talk to the admin, talk to other parents, check out the school, but also look at the academic performance of kids. And that's really what these rankings can do. Now, if your child's already in school, you can take the information in these rankings to the school and ask, hey, I see that there's another school, my kid's school's got a high proportion of kids that have special needs. I see that there's this school down the street that also has a high proportion of students with special needs, but they've improved dramatically over the last 5 years. What can we do to learn from the best practices at that school that has a really similar profile to see the same improvements at my child's school? And so really, I think that the best way to use these rankings and why we make this public is really just to use it as a conversation starter. Okay, so also, these are going to be the future leaders of our community and our country. What does this say about our future? Well, I think there's some really wonderful success stories, as I showed you. And then there are the schools that, they're struggling and there is room for improvement. And so The reason that we make these things public is basically to start these conversations, to shine a light on it. You know, we're talking about this right now, and that's really the point here. That's the reason, you know, we do want it to be digestible and accessible for parents and teachers and policymakers, you know, at the provincial level. We want those things, but we also want to shine that light on it, create that transparency, and create motivation for improvement. We know that competition can create an environment for improvement, and so learning those best practices, becoming one of those success stories when you see the success stories like the ones that I've just highlighted, you know, that I think is really inspiring, and it really touches the lives of kids. As you're saying, these are the future leaders. It is so important that we ensure that every child, regardless of their family background, which some people say, you know, that's what matters, and a child's performance is only going to be determined by those different factors in their background and where they're from, what their postal code is. We say no. The rankings really clearly demonstrate, using statistical evidence, that improvement of any type of school is possible. And that's what's inspiring about this. It doesn't matter if you have a high proportion of English language learners. It doesn't matter if you've got a high proportion of special needs. It doesn't matter what the makeup of the population is. All schools can show dramatic improvement, and that's what these rankings demonstrate. So I think that's the real inspiring part, and the real inspiring story of this report that we put out.
All right, grading our schools. Paige MacPherson, Senior Fellow at Fraser Institute. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.